Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the goings on in the WWE, in particular, um their cancellation of their latest of the announcement of their cancellation on the next SmackDown that's coming to Atlanta, Georgia, and what I think is really going on with their business. Um, well, as you know, we just had the Money in the Bank, and a lot has transpired. John Cena has returned. The Raw after Goldberg came back, which was interesting, and now this news came out. Yeah, that means to me, in my opinion, that WWE is in pretty bad shape because here you have Goldberg, a man in his 50s, a guy who was a star in the 1990s, who hit his peak in 1998, and there you have John Cena, a guy who hasn't really been on the scene in wrestling since 2020, since WrestleMania 36, the Firefly Funhouse, and even then, he wasn't. He was a part timer and not a full timer. So still, WWE continues to rely on these older draws, these draws from the 90s or from the early 2000s, rather than create new stars. Um, and that's why I think their business is failing. That and also professional wrestling is not as profitable as it once was because there is no real major competition. Yes, there's AEW, and they're doing the show with they're doing the combination of the next Slammiversary with Impact and AAA and other all these other promotions, New Japan Pro Wrestling and stuff. But still, they're a very young company. They've only been existing since 2019. A lot of people don't really know who they are by comparison to WWE. If you point, like, I saw an article on Nyla Rose where they said that Nyla Rose was a transgender WWE star. So here, she is a transgender, she is a trans wrestler, but she's not in the WWE. She's in AEW. But the mainstream media doesn't know what is AEW, so they think every wrestler is from the WWE. So AEW still doesn't have that brand recognition. And Impact, although Impact picked up a couple of major signings from uh, the latest purge that happened, like for example, they picked up No Way Jose. They picked up Chelsea Green. Still, these people are not big names in the wrestling industry. They're not huge stars in wrestling. They're minor stars, but the mainstream audience will not know. But John Cena and Bill Goldberg are big mainstream stars that people will know. But the problem is John Cena and Bill Goldberg are positioned now on their respective brands, Raw and SmackDown, to either win or pose a major challenge to Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley, respectively. And that's a huge problem because, okay, let's say with on SummerSlam, right? Cena wins. Okay, let's say Cena works with Roman Reigns and Cena wins. Okay, Cena wins and he goes away to Hollywood, to do a couple of big shows, and then they can't risk having the champion not there, so Roman's going to get the W, and then probably Cena will get it back at WrestleMania. So, but let's say hypothetically John Cena does win. He hypothetically wins the Universal Championship, and then he takes the Universal Championship to Hollywood with him. And rather than continuous to work the circuit, the champion is just not there like it was when Brock Lesnar was champion. And then you rely heavily on was it the U.S. champion Sheamus, who's the secondary title on SmackDown to push the show. But that I don't think would work. So okay, say hypothetically you did it with Raw. Say you did it with Raw. Okay, then you have Raw. Uh, the champion comes out. Bill Goldberg wins the championship from Bobby Lashley, the WWE championship from Bobby Lashley, and then Bill Goldberg goes away. Then you rely heavily on the Intercontinental Champion, who's the secondary champion on Raw. Still doesn't really work out. So having Goldberg and John Cena there on their respective brands taking on Lashley and Roman Reigns only really works if Lashley and Roman Reigns win. But guys like Goldberg and guys like John Cena that are coming in as big time part timers, they're gonna want to get the win if they work with the people that they're working with, even if they're the champion. But that derails Lashley and Roman Reigns. Both Lashley and Roman Reigns have a tremendous amount of heat. And that's the problem with WWE right now is they don't really have any full-time baby faces that could work with either Roman Reigns or Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley and Roman Reigns are very similar characters, each on Raw and SmackDown, but there are no baby faces to work with them. And this is a very unique development with regards to WWE because WWE has traditionally always been a babyface territory. Very few times in WWE history has um, has there ever really been a heel that has been champion for a long period of time. Triple H was in the early 2000s. Yokozuna was from 1990, from June of '93 to March of '94. And of course, most famously in the 70s, superstar Billy Graham was from 1978 to 1980. But other than that, most of the time the champion has been heel. A babyface. Built around a babyface champion, Roman Reigns, when he was a babyface, the company was built around him. The company was built around John Cena when John Cena was there as a full timer, when Stone Cold Steve Austin was there as a full timer. Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund, Hulk Hogan, all these examples when they were all there as full timers. But right now, both major championships are being held by heels. But the heels like Lashley and Roman Reigns, they're so dominant that there's nobody that people will pay to see that will want to beat them. Okay, people say, well, Big E won the Money in the Bank, so Big E is a challenger to Bobby Lashley because of the New Day and Hurt Business feud, right? But does Big E really have the momentum, guys, to go ahead and to be that baby face that challenges that major heel champion in the way that Bret Hart was at WrestleMania 10, or in the way um, that Batista was at WrestleMania 21, where you really wanted to see that babyface take the championship off of that heel. Like you just couldn't wait to see that babyface take that championship off of that particular heel. You didn't really. Big E is not. Big E doesn't have that momentum. you know, to me, in my opinion, he doesn't have that moment. He doesn't even have the momentum that his New Day tag team partner Kofi Kingston had at WrestleMania 35. Going into it, WrestleMania 35, Daniel Bryan was the champion. The roles were reversed, and Kofi Kingston had that momentum where he was making history as being the first undisputed Black WWE champion. That threshold has already been crossed twice already. Kofi Kingston and Bobby Lashley. So Big E doesn't have that. Big E doesn't really have that threshold to really cross no more. It's already been crossed. And on the SmackDown side of things, you don't really have that either. Because who, okay, yeah, Cesaro. You could say, well, okay, Cesaro has the momentum going into on the SmackDown side of things with the Universal Championship rather than Goldberg, Cesaro, or Brock Lesnar. I mean, I'm not rather than Goldberg, rather than John Cena. The confrontations between Goldberg and Bobby Lashley, not so epic. The confrontation between Cena and Roman Reigns, epic. But I think a lot of fans that watch the WWE on a regular would much rather see Cesaro versus Roman Reigns and um, somebody else, possibly Big E, versus Bobby Lashley, rather than a part timer versus Lashley and a part timer versus Reigns. But relying heavily on these part timers and not really pushing a lot of good baby faces, elevating baby faces to the point where baby faces could be seen as a threat in the men's division on both sides in the WWE is hurting the WWE. And then um, in the women's side of things, um, you have an even worse situation. Here you have Alexa Bliss, who is basically beating people with magic. She has a doll that is possessed, and she's beating people with magic. And it's just corny to people because what the Fiend was doing is now what she's doing. Ever since WrestleMania, she's been doing this thing with like the Fiend does, and she beats Shayna Baszler with magic, and it's just like, what the hell, man? Like now we're using magical powers to win championships, and then you have now we have now a new Raw Women's Champion in the former Nikki Cross, who is Nikki Nikki almost Nikki almost superhero, Nikki Ash. Um, this is a gimmick that when she first debuted a couple of weeks ago, fans on the internet were up in arms about this shit. This and Piper Nevins with the nickname Piper Nevins, the Dewdrop. It's like, what the hell is this? This is retarded. You know what I mean? Like people say, well, it was her idea. You know, it was her idea to come out with as a superhero and as a superhero character rather than the psychopathic character she had before. She was gonna come out with a superhero gimmick. Okay, but and apparently WWE is behind it because WWE is pushing her because she's now the women's champion. She beat Charlotte. It's good to see somebody else who's not the four horsewomen be on top. But let's just see how it goes. I don't think it will pan out well. I think it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick that doesn't have legs. It's kind of like Hurricane Helms, but worse. On the SmackDown side of things, again, who for Bianca Belair to face? Bailey is out with an injury. Sasha's out producing movies, probably filming another episode of The Mandalorian, and you don't really see see much on the SmackDown women's side of things, and they were carrying the ball last year. So this is contributing, I believe, to the decline in ticket sales. People are just not caring because you don't have those personalities that drive the product anymore. There's a lot of injuries. There's a lot of people still not coming back because of the pandemic. There's a lot of firings. WWE in general is just falling apart. I said to somebody earlier that WWE, I think, is dying. WWE is just slowly falling away, and Peacock may be regretting their decision to buy the WWE network. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Love y'all.